Welcome back, Goslings, to your weekly vlog. Today we will start with a question about me, the medium, and the question is thus: what is my favorite show? Now, my favorite show is Ghost Adventures. Of course it isn't. That show's terrible. That's why it's my favorite. You need a show that you can laugh at, Goslings. Some people watch sitcoms. I watch people fumbling around in the dark, making up strange facts about ghosts. It makes me happy. After the disastrous Reddit ghost story last week, where, plot twist, the ghost wasn't even a ghost, it was just someone who thought their roommate was a ghost, but they weren't a ghost at all. This week's episode is titled, My Grandma Used to Lock Us in the Basement. Oh, Goslings, I'm sensing some trauma. And what do ghosts love most? Trauma. So let us begin. This comes from Unable. They say, when I was a kid, instead of going to a normal daycare, I would go to my grandmother's house every day. My grandmother did run a semi-legitimate daycare. What does semi-legitimate mean? And can anyone be semi-legitimate? But she's a cheap person. She didn't have the amount of workers you need to watch the amount of kids she was watching. So it wasn't legitimate, Goslings. It was illegal. Government workers or CPS agents, I honestly don't know the name of the organization, would come to check to make sure everything was up to code from time to time. When that would happen, if you were blood related, you would go into the basement. Now, already I feel the title's probably misleading. It says, My Grandma Used to Lock Us in the Basement. I don't remember what this is called. I think Connor called it ghost bait? Oh no, clickbait. That's it, clickbait. To lure this medium in. Alright, we'll continue. I made Connor read this story this time. I warmed up my hand and I said, if you don't read this, a ghost is going to slap you. Not me. I have to warm up my hand to tell a ghost to do it, but I said, make sure there's an actual ghost this time. I hated the basement. It would be weird if a kid loved the basement. Then you'd have problems. It was the worst place in the world to me. It was always freezing and had concrete floors. Gosling, sounds like a torture chamber. Wooden panel walls from the 70s, definitely a torture chamber, and old toys scattered around or in boxes. You had lots to do in the basement. I don't know why you're complaining. The only light was strung up from the ceiling, the kind you had to pull to turn on. That screams spooky, Goslings. I was too young to remember all the details now, but the wooden panels were about a foot away from the actual cement walls in the basement. You couldn't tell unless you went to a specific one spot deep in there and you found a hole in it. She would put 3 or 8 of us in there, in the concrete hole in the wall. Oh, Goslings. Grandma's crazy. She'd usually put the older kids down there, like the 11-year-olds, but since I was blood related to her, sometimes I was forced in there too. Goslings, what is happening? Like I said, the basement was freezing and terrified me, but when I was hidden in the wall, and you had to go in the wall, it was always very warm. I was never scared in the walls. I would usually just ride it out, play on my leapfrog. What is a leapfrog? That sounds like a torture device. Why are you making the frogs leap? Or whispered with the other kids. Risky. You don't know who's going to respond when you're whispering. But I couldn't hear what they said. I'd only hear the louder parts, like the S in C or T and what. Okay. I was a quiet, weird kid. You thought a wall was comfortable. You didn't have to tell us that. We knew you were a weird kid, and that's why you're welcome here. I knew no one would really believe me if I said anything, so I kept it to myself. I wasn't scared, and actually quite interested in ghosts, so it was my own little secret. Gosling, someone trying to take my job away? Kids at my grandmother's house frequently had imaginary friends. Uh-oh, Goslings. This is where it gets spooky. There was this one girl in foster care named Reagan. Like the Exorcist, Goslings. Risky business. Who I would play with until she left. Sometimes I get distracted and play with my cousins when they were all outside, and I remember seeing her squatted down by the house. In the backyard, you could get under the house, but it was covered up by a short plastic fence. My grandma put toys and stuff under there, but that's where Reagan would be. talking while holding the fence. Oh, Goslings, get spooky. There was something about the bathroom that scared everyone. We're jumping a lot of locations. I wish it was more linear. The kids would sometimes get someone to go in there, turn off the lights, and slam the door. The poor kid inside would scream and scream. The timeout chair was next to the door. I hated it. You were separated from everyone else, stuck next to that scary bathroom until you served your time. That's the power of timeout, Gosling. The house stayed in our family for a long time. My grandma actually ended up closing the daycare. Yeah, Goslings, because this is an illegal daycare where the children are forced into a wall in the basement to stay hidden away from the authorities. So surprising that it was closed down. She started flipping houses and renting them out. She's probably a millionaire now. You don't know? A few years ago, she decided she was going to move up to North Carolina, but she was going to renovate her house and sell it to one of her daughters. Eventually, they had to tear up that extremely old basement. I don't remember the reason for sure. I was still young at the time, but they started digging into the cement floor. Pretty certain it's because the basement was literally 5 feet tall. You had to squat to get down there. They had a pretty ambitious plan to finish the basement, but almost immediately, they stopped digging. I knew this next part for sure. I remember exactly where I was when I heard this, and I immediately felt sick to my stomach and dizzy. They found bones, Goslings! Human freaking bones! Probably dozens of them. Oh my goodness, Goslings. Little ones too. We were walking, living, talking, eating, playing over a DIY graveyard. Now, like I told you a few weeks ago, Goslings, every house is technically a graveyard. Here you are right now, watching this video. You're probably on top of a dead body. Be comforted by that. They immediately called the police. But when the cops came over, they looked at them and said they'd keep them as evidence just in case. But there's nothing they could do about it. They could just keep digging. So they finished remodeling the house. My family still talks about it. There's more paranormal stories that happened to the family. This is the only one I was involved with. I can write more if anyone is interested, but that's all I feel like writing today. Go to this Reddit post right now and say, we demand more stories, because the setup for this story is fantastic, Goslings. You have a little girl speaking to said imaginary friend who is in the basement where their body presumably is. Goslings, this house is 1,000% haunted. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that those poor spirits, those poor children's spirits, were trapped there due to some dark, evil history at this house. Grandma moved away. Could she have known about the bones, Goslings? Maybe she found them when she moved in and thought, well, that's someone else's problem. If you discovered bones in your house, what would you do? What if they were little bones? Would that make you sad, Goslings? I would imagine that since these bones have been discovered, if they are given a proper burial, not in a police evidence warehouse, get rid of them immediately and bury them respectfully, these spirits may finally rest in peace. What did you think of this story, Goslings? Did you enjoy it? Be sure to comment your own ghost story down below or on Reddit so we can all read it together. Have a fantastic weekend, Goslings. I'll see you back here for some more ghost stories. Farewell.